Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to transform advanced grammar from a boring textbook concept into your ultimate corporate survival tool. If you've ever felt like your words just aren't carrying the weight of your actual expertise when the pressure is on, well, you're in exactly the right place. Today, we're taking advanced modals for executive speculation straight into the boardroom.
Okay, picture this. You're sitting in an incredibly tense post-mortem meeting. Reputations are literally on the line, and the board is demanding answers. The numbers are totally red. A major tech launch just completely crashed and burned. Everyone is stressed, people are aggressively looking for someone to blame, and you can just cut the tension in the room with a knife.
So how do you respond to a hostile risk committee without absolutely destroying your reputation? In a pressure cooker environment like this, every single word you choose is either going to be a massive liability or a solid diplomatic shield. When that microphone is passed to you, your phrasing will instantly dictate if they see you as just another defensive employee or a highly capable leader calmly analyzing a crisis. Let's break down how to be the latter.
Section 1, the corporate dilemma. Postmortem under pressure.
Here is the reality. Standard everyday English completely lacks the precision required to survive a high-stakes executive risk committee. When the stakes are this high, any ambiguity, or even just a slight lack of tact, will immediately erode your executive presence. Everyday English is great for a coffee break chat, right? But in front of a risk committee, it leaves you entirely exposed. If you just state raw facts or raw opinions, you're practically begging for pushback. You really need language that creates a buffer, a professional analytical distance between the crisis itself and your assessment of it.
Moving right along to Section 2, the B2 trap, the danger of flat English. This brings us to a huge pitfall for transnational professionals, pragma linguistic failure. This is when you use grammatically correct but pragmatically inadequate language that results in an inappropriate or even offensive tone. What's absolutely fascinating here is that your vocabulary might be flawless. Your verb tenses might be technically perfect, but if your tone accidentally sounds accusatory or overly blunt, you fail. It means your language is ignoring the complex political dynamics of the boardroom, which can make you sound aggressive or worse, childishly defensive.
Let's look at a concrete example. They didn't see the market shift versus they couldn't have foreseen the market shift. This perfectly illustrates the difference between sounding like a complaining junior employee and a highly analytical executive. That first phrase is a flat B2 level statement. It sounds exactly like finger pointing. But look at that C1 shield. They couldn't have foreseen the market shift. Wow. Suddenly you aren't blaming anyone. You're deducing an impossibility based on the data. You are shielding your colleagues while keeping everything totally objective.
Section 3, the tactical strategy. Building the diplomatic shield. Let's arm you with some premium linguistic weaponry. Executive past deduction. We have must have done for logical certainty, might or could have done for analytical distance, and can't or couldn't have done for impossibility. By deploying these advanced modals of deduction, you strip away all that emotional finger-pointing. You replace it with impenetrable analysis. Saying a competitor must have known establishes logical certainty without the emotion. Saying a vendor might have encountered delays introduces analytical distance. It's an educated speculation, not a wild guess. And couldn't have done frames a failure as an absolute impossibility given the context. It's brilliant.
Now, let's look at a critical resource management distinction. We needn't have allocated that budget versus we didn't need to allocate that budget. One phrase admits a costly mistake, while the other literally proves your financial competence. We needn't have allocated that budget means you actually spent the money, and it was completely unnecessary. It's a confession of wasted resources. But we didn't need to allocate that budget means it wasn't necessary, and crucially, you successfully avoided spending it. Getting these two mixed up, man, that can literally cost you your job.
At the C1 level, grammar is absolutely no longer just a set of abstract rules you memorize. It is a political equalizer and a strict risk management tool. Choosing the precise modal fundamentally changes how your leadership capability is perceived in that boardroom. You're not just forming sentences anymore. You're actively managing corporate risk. You're projecting sophistication, eloquence, and absolute authority.
Section 4, the error clinic. Curing L1 interference.
Let's talk about L1 interference. These are ingrained errors caused by literal translations from your native language, resulting in weak, unprofessional corporate Spanglish. Maintaining your diplomatic shield under pressure is tough, right? Many professionals fossilize bad habits, relying on literal translations from Spanish or whatever their native language is, and it completely dilutes their authority. Under intense scrutiny, your brain panics and reverts to direct translation. That strips away the executive presence you've worked so incredibly hard to build.
Check this out. Never use clunky, weak structures like, it's possible that they, when the sophisticated, they might have, instantly commands respect. It's possible that they is a literal translation of es posible que. It's bloated, and honestly, it sounds a bit insecure. They might have, on the other hand, is crisp, native-level C1 phrasing. It projects a calm, highly calculated assessment of risk.
And here is a huge one. Confusing the English translations for no era necesario can accidentally confess to wasting corporate resources. Like we just talked about, if you mix up needn't have and didn't need to, you might accidentally tell the board you just wasted millions of euros. In Spanish, no era necesario covers a lot of ground, but English demands absolute precision here. If you literally translate the idea of an unnecessary expense and pick the wrong modal, you could inadvertently confess to a massive financial blunder when you were actually trying to brag about saving the company money.
Section 5. The Executive Challenge. Performance under pressure. Okay, let's put your skills to the test right now. Translate this defensive B2 attack into C1 leadership. You wasted our money on that vendor. Mentally transform this flat, accusatory complaint into a sophisticated executive statement. Imagine a colleague throws this at you across the table. How do you reframe the fact that money was spent unnecessarily without sounding like you're caught in a petty schoolyard fight?
Here's the C1 shield. We needn't have allocated those resources to the vendor. Notice how beautifully this elevates the tone? It becomes a diplomatic, objective observation of wasted resources. We needn't have allocated admits the unnecessary action, sure, but it wraps it in formal impenetrable grammar. It completely diffuses the personal attack.
Try this one. Translate this flat B2 statement into C1 leadership. It's impossible that they read the market report. How would you frame this impossibility to the risk committee without sounding overly aggressive? Because just saying it's impossible is incredibly blunt and frankly makes you sound emotional and reactive. Think back to our modals of past deduction.
The answer is, they couldn't have reviewed the market report. Spot on. If you went with couldn't have, you've successfully distanced yourself and framed the failure as an analytical deduction, not a personal attack. Couldn't have reviewed acts as a logical conclusion based purely on evidence. It is a brilliant, highly professional shield.
All right, final scenario. Translate this vague B2 excuse into C1 leadership. We didn't have to spend the contingency fund, so we didn't. Let's lock down that tricky resource management distinction. You want to proudly tell the board that the money was saved. How do you say it with undeniable executive authority?
We didn't need to utilize the contingency fund. Absolutely perfect. By using didn't need to, you just successfully defended your budget to the board with pristine, unassailable grammar. You clearly stated that the action was unnecessary and that it did not happen. The funds are safe and your reputation is secured.
So, by replacing flat emotional reactions with the analytical distance of advanced modals, you project true executive presence. At this level, you aren't just communicating anymore, you are actively managing corporate risk with every single sentence you construct. You're using the deep nuances of the C1 level to navigate complex power dynamics, protect your team, and establish yourself as an unshakable analytical force in the room.
So, I'll leave you with this question. In your next high-stakes corporate postmortem, will your words be a B2 liability or your ultimate diplomatic shield? Reflect on that as you prepare to command the room in your next strategic negotiation. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and remember, in the boardroom, your grammar is your armor. Keep refining it.